Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host Kitae Kim. He's co-founder of Foveate, and I saw one of his post on LinkedIn. It was about AC tech startups, and his comment was on bootstrapping his company. And then I checked his website, and I thought I have to get him on the show because it's such an inspiring journey. He's been building this for a while, so it would be awesome to get him on the show. So thanks a lot for your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I've been working on Foveate since I want to say 2022, I believe, or maybe 2023. But yeah, it's been a total journey getting here. I'm actually trained in architecture at the University of Michigan, but I started off in the art world where I studied art and design first, then made my way to architecture. They were in the same building, just one floor difference. So I really went between the two, and I worked in the fine art world, building large scale interactive installations for many years, designing museum shows, Archimedia facades. So, you go to like the Burj Khalifa, you see all these LEDs on top of the building, and like that's a lot of what I did. Then I was also doing a lot of proposals in business development and bid development. So, how do you get these leads? How do you qualify them? How do you create a good design proposal? How do you research the client? And then how do you win them? I kind of have seen the whole gambit from start to finish of projects. And because I worked more in the experiential realm or rather the like tech enabled architecture side, timelines are usually much, much shorter. We come in kind of after the building is just about done and then we integrate. So I've seen a lot of projects actually get completed, which has been nice as well. So I did that for about 6 years before starting Foveate.
Whoa, such a diverse set of experience. Was there any point where you felt like, I'm not sure what I should do because I have so many different interests and figuring out the career journey?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to be honest with you, I think about that all the time. Even now, I'm just like, oh man, like, I'm co-founding a startup, but I also miss designing a lot in some respects. Also, um, I think it depends. It's kind of like, once you've tasted that side of architecture, that is not just like, core and shell, you're kind of like, I don't want to do that other stuff anymore. Like, I don't want to, I never want to detail a bathroom again, or like design a parking lot. So that side has always been more fun to me. And because of my background in art and design, I have a lot of experience in creating media, rendering or creating interactives, installations, programming them, sensors, stuff like that. So I know that side pretty well. And I been able to mix that, with Grasshopper and computational design over my years. So I think I'm always kind of like stuck in between different industries, and that's really bad for the LinkedIn algorithm. But like, that's
Mm.
just how I am. Like, he's contact, and that's it.
There are not enough tags to put a label because, yeah. So, can you share who were the mentors who were influential in this your journey? They guided you, your seniors, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say my old boss, Rafael Lozano Hemmer, he was the artist whose studio I worked at, and I pitched myself cold for this job. There was no job description. It was just I DM'd him. He was a small art studio at the time in Montreal. It was about 9 people. He spoke at the art school at Michigan, which is how I came to know of him. And the work was very architectural. So then, I was applied to a whole bunch of corporate firms after I graduated. And I was like, oh, this is not really like resonating with me. I should just go cold message this artist whose work I like and who I think needs an architect and just see what happens. And so he didn't respond for 2 weeks for this weird cold email about Brexit. But then eventually he was like, that was a weird email. Like, we should meet. So then we ended up meeting, and then I flew to Montreal and, moved there in like 10 days. And I'd be there for another 6 years. So I would say the whole team there, was very instrumental to mentoring me. And luckily, it was Raphael's studio, and it's very small, it's 9 people. And then, as we grew and I was working on RFPs the first year only, we won so many projects that we grew to like almost 20 people after 5 years.
Mm.
So it was a big growing journey, and everybody that I met there was somebody that I learned from. But Raphael was a super good boss in the sense that he gives a lot of trust to young people. So if you seem like you're good at something, he'll just let you run with it as far as you can. And that is really, I think, key to being a mentor, is kind of just guiding people in the right direction and then letting them go crazy, right? Letting them kind of explore the full spectrum of their abilities and not handicapping them, right? So as a young designer, you don't really know what your limit is, which is good and bad. But on his end, I think that was good to just let a lot of us kind of have our own agency and do things without necessarily asking for permission, having a more freer budget. So like if we wanted to go buy a piece of software, I didn't have to go through 3 layers of people just to get like a Rhino plugin. It's just like go buy it. You want to use Touch
Uh,
Designer? Go buy it. So that was really key on the mentorship side, I think.
Amazing. Like it's rare to have that kind of agency in the field.
Yeah, and I was like 22 when I started, so it was really crazy.
Nice. What led you to the idea of Foveate?
Well, like I was saying at Raphael Studio, I only worked on RFPs the first year. So that was a lot. I did one RFP every 2 weeks, and that was kind of like my only job at the first year because business was a bit slow in the sense that we were installing art installations everywhere, but we didn't need to get new work necessarily. So it's kind of like, oh, this guy whose job description I did not create, who I didn't know that I needed, like, what should we do with him? And we both were like, well, I can design stuff like conceptually really well. I can take your ideas and like turn them into realistic renderings that we can propose. And we were getting a lot of requests for proposals at the time. So I was doing all that and I created the template for what our proposals should look like, which is kind of a crazy thing to give to a brand new employee. Weirdly, it is very common. Like the junior designer always makes the proposal decks, which is kind of strange in hindsight. But I got really good at it, and eventually I figured out, oh, we're using Photoshop and like Keyshot to do renderings and decks. This doesn't really make sense. We're creating interactive installations, and I can show you what some of them look like if that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Share my screen here. So there are these, absolutely massive interactive installations. This is on the U.S. Mexico border, a series of searchlights. And this is an interesting one. This is all designed in Rhino Grasshopper. This is actually a custom fabricated tree where as you walk underneath it, each one of these bells is actually a speaker and a light, and these cameras track you in space. They'll play a different language of the world over your head. So this is a permanent install at Planet Work Museum, Washington, D.C. But, this is the kind of thing where it's like, hey, imagine a tree made of metal with 400 speakers that each one's a different language of the world. And as people walk underneath it, they get tracked and it plays. Like, design that. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're using Rhino Grasshopper for this one. And then my real innovation there back in 2017 was introducing Unreal Engine. So that was Unreal 4 at the time and doing VR walkthroughs for clients. So before we would pitch, we would give them the VR walkthrough, and then that really just sealed the deal for proposals because they like felt like it was so real. And you can see a little snippet here of what the project actually looked like. Between the virtual proposal and the real thing, they're like incredibly similar, like very little difference in terms of what the actual final thing was. So I think this is where clients really felt like they understood a project, a painterly render, right? Or just like a napkin sketch. It actually is like the real thing. And because it was in virtual reality, they could hear the languages, right? They could walk up to the tree. So it was very realistic. And I think that experience with creating the proposals in InDesign and then rendering in Unreal, I was like, oh, this is a very tedious and time consuming process. Like there's got to be a better way to communicate design and the value of design to non-design people, right? The client stakeholders, they're not designers like us. They're not engineers. They don't understand exactly what we're making. So we have to show it to them, right? And show it to them in a very intuitive and organic and easy way. So that's what really inspired Foveate is how can we, A, reduce the time it takes to create these design proposals? Like, why am I moving images around and cropping them and changing a font style here and figuring out like, oh, this image is this ratio, so it should go on the left side and make this text here, but this blank space is weird. Like, why is that a problem? And then B, it's like, nowadays, we have all these AI rendering and so many images, so many videos. We can have 3D walkthroughs, like with all the BIM 2.0 apps, 60 photos. Like there's so many ways to communicate what we do. But at the end of the day, we're all just using pretty much PowerPoint, like Google Slides to try and do this. And it's kind of like, oh, that's not the best way to communicate design intent. It's not built for architects, engineers, designers. That is really just for people in boardrooms who, communicate statistical information typically. So that's really what inspired Foveate is how can we as people who are dictating the built environment be able to communicate the value of what we do super easily and quickly. So that was the main inspiration of Foveate.
This is such a amazing project. Like great job on the design and like the delivery.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that one is one of my favorite projects.
Like one of the challenges with building products with designers is this amount of feature requests just for
Mm.
them to migrate to a product is so high. Tell us, like, okay, you have this idea, feels like you were solving a problem you were facing in the past, but now you go from a designer to a product person who understands how to do prioritization. Walk us through that phase.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually, when I was in college, I interned at a tech startup. So I kind of always knew, even in university, that I didn't want to be a typical architect. And for all kind of the reasons that we hear about, right? When you're in school, they tell you, like, this is a very hard profession. You're going to work long hours. You might not see the projects you work on ever get built because you'll leave and go to a different firm. And, what I realize is, especially someone who studied art, I like having a lot of agency. I like technology and I like being enabled. But the profession moves very, very slowly. It doesn't let you do that. So I kind of always knew I wanted to be on the tech side. It's some way, shape, or form. I just didn't really quite know how. But because I worked at the startup Co Everywhere, which became Ground Signal, I understood the product design process a little bit, how to interview people, how to come up with design variations and test them and things like that. But you're absolutely right where the design requests can be endless. Like the earlier version of Foveate that we debuted at the SketchUp 060 challenge last year was all 3D walkthroughs, right? People be like, oh, we want this feature. We want to have Rhino 3DM support. We want to do this, do that. But then we kind of realized like, oh, some of the technology just isn't there yet. Balancing what is the perceived problem that these people have and what is the solution that they're asking for, like, do those match up? So for example, we had built a 3D engine, a web browser-based 3D engine. You could upload models from any CAD or bitmap and share them with different points of view called moments that could describe this camera point of view in space and text information. And we thought that was a great system, but people kept on asking for more and more 3D features. And eventually we realized like, oh, that's just not the point of communicating, right? Design intents. Like, that doesn't convince the client, oh, we should necessarily greenlight this project or not. And then we actually looked at their behavior and we're asking them, what are you doing with Foveate? They're like, oh, we use it at the end of our proposal where we just make this PDF deck in PowerPoint or Google Slides. And then we show a video that is like a render fly through. And then we have your Foveate scene as like the real time interactive thing on a browser that the client can just kind of click through and use like a slide deck, even though it's a 3D scene. So we're like, oh, okay. Like, what we actually need to do is tackle the whole process of them generating the deck and using that to tell the story of their design, having a separate video that plays that is the animated fly through, and then having this interactive 3D scene. Like, those all need to go together. So I think in some sense, like, Henry Ford was right, where it's like, if you ask the people for what they want, they just say faster
Mm.
horses, right? Like, they're not thinking 5 steps ahead because they're in the drudgery of the day to day. And they're like, I need like this small optimization to like make my life better. Like, if you asked a lot of designers, especially like in Rhino or something, right? Like, they just want to add another little patch to Grasshopper, and that's going to like solve a problem for them. But that is not what solves a problem for like the larger body of people. So one thing we realized with the older version of Foveate is because it was 3D based, only a 3D designer or person can use that application. A PM who hasn't touched Revit in, a couple of years, they don't really have access to the model. They still need to see it, but they can't just upload a file from Revit and show that to a client, right? Or even remember how to navigate it super well. And that doesn't make for a great experience. So they just prefer to show drawings and images and video. So we were able to kind of just suss that out along the way, but it can be very difficult to get that.
I see. And like, how much time it took for you to build the MVP?
So we actually were an agency before we started Foveate. So we were we called Third Axis, was a creative agency doing 3D and VR projects. So we had a lot of experience putting 3D models on a website. That was the earliest MVP of Foveate. So that was probably only took us like 6 months. And then we really
Mm.
tried to like turn that into a product and find product market fit and find the core audience who would use it. And we posted on the Rhino blog, and we got like hundreds of people on our waiting list because they were so interested in just the concept of 3D presentation. So we made a whole 3D website that has like JS WebGL scene with just like a very simple Cube-on-it, high quality background model, and just did 3D presentations for architects. And people just, they were like, sign up. So we thought that was a really good sign. I think after working on that for like a year, year and a half, I kind of realized how people actually buy and how that
Mhm.
influences the product that you make. So this is a good tip for other founders is you have to understand that the person using your product is not the buyer, like 99% of the time, especially with bigger companies. You have to go through a lot of layers. So it's like, what is the perceived problem that you're actually solving versus the problem for the people who are giving you user feedback? So we get all this advice and feedback from smaller designers and firms, but they're not the ones who move the needle for you as a business unless you can get a ton of them. And then even then, you still need to broaden your audience, right? And make it so many, many people can use your app more broadly, right? That's kind of the trend with tech nowadays is, ChatGPT, anybody can go in, write in a prompt, it creates something, right? Whether it's good or not, that's up to you, but that's just kind of how it works.
So, building on that advice, if you were to do it again, you would like for the problem you're solving, you would think one step ahead. And would the decision maker find this a significant enough problem to pay good amount of money rather than they like, okay, an intern can do it. Like it's not a doesn't move the
Yeah,
needle for a business.
exactly.
Okay.
I think you have to think about A, which budget am I coming out of, right? And this has really been on our mind recently is problem with having a 3D tool, in my opinion, is that it just comes out of the design IT budget, right? So you have to get the design IT manager to approve of it, and they have to go to the C-suite and get them to approve of it. But the C-suite is already spending a bajillion dollars on Revit. So they're kind of like, oh my God, we can't be spending more money on design tools. Like, I'm sure if you were to look at the breakdown, and I wish I had an IT manager's breakdown of their costs, Revit has to be like one of the highest. I think that's why, Arcole, Snapshot, the BIM 2.0 tools are doing so well is because the IT managers are so pissed off about just how much stuff costs, how much more expensive it's about to get, in 2 years. So I think that's another thing for people to keep in mind is the cost of your product and even the conceptual desire to use it. It has to click for people, right? And that is the thing to solve before making anything. So I think this is why a lot of founders who come from bigger firms kind of do well because they realize, oh, what's the thing inside of the firm that is causing people a lot of stress, right? What keeps the firm owners up at night? Like, is it training? Oh, my new people can't use software. My one design technologist who knows Grasshopper super well is overworked because they had to touch every project. Maybe everybody should learn Grasshopper, right? That's what Oliver at Architect Network, he figured out, right? Is like training is really important and training everybody a little bit in these tools.
Have you seen successes of people addressing the sales and marketing budget in architecture firm and building tools around that?
Yeah, I mean, so the new version of Foveate is all about the sales process. So actually, I'll just share my screen here again, and I'll show
Hmm.
you. This is our brand new website. So we've tried to basically redo all of our language to address the sales problem with bids and RFPs and proposals. We haven't yet gone out and like tested this on a whole bunch of firms yet, but this is what we're thinking about of how to A, get into that separate budget that's not the design budget because we were stuck there before, even though we weren't a design tool. And then B, how to address the problem that people kept on saying they liked the old version of Foveate for. So we literally heard people say, we want this to stop to death by PowerPoint. And we're like, oh, like, what do you mean? And they'd say, clients get so bored, like we're just clicking through slides. And I remember I was talking to someone from Disney Imagineering, great architecture team, and they have like 40 pages of just renders. And I was like, damn, that's a lot. Like, if I was a client, I think I would get tired too. Like, I don't care how good the renders are. That's just too many in that format, right? So, something that we realize is that if we want to tackle the proposal problem, we have to position ourselves in a way that makes sense to people, right? So everything is about painting a better picture of what the project is going to look like, making it super easy for people to receive a proposal. So no more getting a PDF like that's 50 megabytes and having to download it, and then making it easier for people to work on. So like there's a lot of firms who still are using PowerPoint or InDesign, but they can't collaborate. So it's okay, well, we have to build that in, right? And then also the things for sales that you have in other tools. Like I don't know if you've ever used Apollo or HubSpot or something like that, but they have tracking, right? You send out a proposal to somebody and you could track, did they open it? How many times did they open it? Did they see it? And then as a salesperson, you can follow up, be like, hey, I just saw you open the proposal. Let me know if you have any questions. I would be happy to jump into a meeting, right? And it's the client. They're like, wow, they read my mind. This person, or like, Mayer's so on top of it, dude. Like he knows exactly what I'm thinking. And like, I'm feeling pretty sensitive on the budget right now. So that's what we're going to talk about next meeting, right? Like, how do we streamline the whole process for everybody? And as a founder who's had to go to talk to all different firms across industries, like I got pretty good at sales and like had to learn, but it's all psychology, right? And a kind of emotional design in a way. Like you have to be very empathetic with the other person. So architects are not good at that when it comes to the sales process. They hate the word salesy. So how can we just kind of automate this thing for them, right? And that's really the point of Foveate in general. That's just we had to repackage it in a way that makes sense. But should I show what the product looks like now, Mayor?
Yes, like that's a great time.
Okay, yeah. So this is an example of a proposal that you can make with Foveate. So one thing we've done is basically created a type form-esque series of questions where you answer them and then it generates a proposal for you. So you don't have to worry about formatting. You don't have to worry about you know, pressing your PDF on smallpdf.com and sending it to people, or laying in a bunch of images and cropping them to the right size. Foveate's all just now browser based, it's responsive. It has things like really great media support. All these fields are editable. So the client name, submission date, get reminders about this proposal's due in 2 weeks, stuff like that. And then it can just be shared on a link with people. So I can invite my teammate Ian here, make him editor, commenter, share this with the client, be able to track the share link and see when they opened it, and then have the analytics of, oh, this person, may have opened this proposal or not. But basically, it's a way that this is all a fully responsive web page that's editable, kind of like a microsite generator that has full support for videos, webcam recordings, so you could personalize them and do all the things that like a really, really good biz dev or salesperson at a firm does, but automate them and package in a beautiful manner that architects love, right? So this is just an example of a villa, and this is from a Twinmotion exercise. We work with all the different AEC companies, rendering models, whatever, Rhino, Twinmotion, Unreal, yeah. So you can just add now media sections like carousels, just like Instagram or something like that. We can go through every design variation. They don't have to scroll through a list that be like, which render was that? Is that like the fourth render in the upper right hand corner on page 4? It's like, no, you can just go there and be able to click on each image, expand them to see them full view, all just like simple things that Google Slides honestly should have done, but haven't. I was talking to an architect from Shop and she was like, I've been trying to reach Google for months so that they could just add Google 3D model support to Google Slides. I'm like, all right, well, we could just do that today. Like, that's not a problem for us. Having map support, so you can just edit this location and be able to, put in a new area for where this project is going to be. So if I said, New York City, then it's going to go ahead and update and now give me that full map view of where this project is. It's fully interactive, so I can explore this, show it to my client. They know exactly where this project is going to be, and then have a 3D walkthrough. So I can upload 3D models. This is a SketchUp model, and then be able to create different save views so a client can walk themselves through the space and really understand it, right? So kind of doing all the things that a good proposal should have, give the client clarity into the project, and then B, have them understand exactly what we're trying to do and understand the benefits or the transformation that they're going to receive in a personalized way to them. And then be able to show all the technical information that goes with a good proposal. So I just had this talk about what goes into a good proposal, and we have a timeline generator here too. So wouldn't it be like, let's say BIM model done, and I can say this is going to take 19 weeks, right? I can add this as a milestone and save this. And so now we have a whole timeline here. The client can understand, oh, we're starting here. We're expected to finish here. It's going to take this long. Here's the milestones in the project. So instead of making this in Excel and generating a chart and putting inside of a PowerPoint, it's just all within here. You want deliverables? It's like, okay, we can just edit this. We have options for flat rate, for monthly, and be able to create basically a very easy to understand budget that allows architects to also charge in a different way. It's not just hourly, right? So I can say, Rhino model And this is going to now be $2,000 a month for 3 months, right? So I'll save this. And now they can see the final investment that they're going to have and then all the costs associated with this. The construction management for 18 months. Okay. It all makes much more sense. It's all interactive. You have to go back to Excel to redo all this stuff. And then I also have this recording here. So it's a way that I can speak to the client personally and explain to them the purpose of this project, how they're going to benefit using their name, doing all like the personal things that actually convert into sales, right? Without feeling like this is too salesy of a process. We really just want to make it more automated and easy and really more like a luxury process, right? If you were to go buy an Hermes bag in Paris, right? It is a very, very luxurious experience. There's nothing luxurious about sending a client a 52-page PDF that they have to go download and then figure out how to open and then like scroll through and be like, oh, there's like 5 design variations on different pages. And they're using this really small light gray font that doesn't open well on my computer, right? So how can we kind of reformat that for everybody in an easier way? So that's the point of Foveate. And then also, this doesn't work yet, but having different styles so that you could just change these different presets and then not have to go design a different InDesign or a Google Slides template every time for your company, right? Just have it so anybody can log in, use your company's preset, their logo and stuff like that, and have a beautiful proposal ready to go and do it in a record amount of time.
I'm really impressed by the product. Like there's some things which sometimes makes so much sense. Like we are communicating spatial design and everything. It should be interactive. Why are we still in like static, not dynamic format?
Yeah.
And the features and the whole walkthrough, it's incredible.
And I can show you too, like, oh, we want to add a different section, text, media, and embed. Like, can do any of that easily. Let's do add media here. Let's say we got some new renders. So I've been using Midjourney a lot to generate a bunch of building renders. So we'll just take a couple different files here for like facade options. We're going to use green glass and just upload them. We don't have to worry about cropping them or anything like that. To just upload here. And then I can go ahead and just like Instagram, select multiple variations because now this is going to be all facade options, right? And add these here. Just call this facade options and boom. I just have this. A client can go through. We can talk about each one. It's not 3 different pages inside of the deck. We have to keep on jumping back and forth. It's just all right here. Super easy to use. All these sections can be moved around too and be able to show all the information that you have to use to make a good proposal at once. We just want to automate it in a way that actually is converting for clients. So, people ask us like, why would I use Foveate instead of just a Google Slides or something? Or even like, let's say Gamma, one of the new slide apps. And I've used them and I can understand why they're useful for enterprise, let's say, like corporations, because they can generate slides with graph very, very quickly. Not a great UX, in my opinion, for how you do it, but they can generate their own graphics. But for architects, like we just don't need that, right? What we actually need to do is talk about space, talk about design, talk about what the client actually gets out of our proposal, right? So we just want to create these proposals with templates for each industry, architecture, engineering, construction, events, experiential, real estate, that have these sections within them that explain the benefits to clients in ways that are already converting. For example, if you say to a client, here's the contract, right? Psychologically, that's the wrong word to use if you want to justify your price, because contract is very legal. It doesn't sound like a luxurious thing. The proper word that luxury uses, for example, is agreement, right? Please sign the agreement, right? It sounds much more formal. It sounds like we're in a partnership, right? So we're on the same level. Doesn't make me sound like a vendor, but rather more like an expert. And then for a budget, right? Typically architects have a page called budget. And you actually don't want to do that as well because that's not tied to what the customer is getting out of it. So calling that section deliverables, right? Calling the total price investment, that totally changes how someone perceives what you're offering to them. Architects and construction especially are so bad at competing on price, right? They don't know how to be able to charge a higher amount for what they're doing, right? The best people in the world at this are probably Foster and Partners. And you know why? It's because they position themselves as the luxury brand of architecture firms. You don't come to them because you're signing a contract, right? And there's a budget. You come to them because they're promising to transform you and benefit you in a way. So we're trying to automate and package all of that. It's a one super easy to use, beautiful looking system that can make proposals much, much faster are much more impressive. They have 3D support, they have drawings, they have media, they gel well with AI tools. They can embed boards from Miro, they can embed videos from YouTube, they can embed article scenes, right? We want all that together in one. I think that is ultimately the future of what an interactive presentation or proposal is, right? It's easy for a client to get. It's much more impressive. It speaks to them in their language. It's personalized with things like video. And, imagine like Indeed, for example. What if the firm decides to train AI on her voice and likeness and they recorded her video here and Zaha is telling you, here's your project, right? That could be a little creepy, but also for certain clients, that's amazing. They're like, holy shit, you know, she's back to life. Or let's say for an architect who's still alive, Bjarke Ingels or Thomas Hedwick or something. Thomas Hedwick has a very kind of like nice voice that's, British and considered. It sounds very artistic, right? His diction is a certain way, and he's a very good presenter. People like that kind of person, kind of a more romanticized architect on a project, right? Or Santiago Calatrava, his voice is very, very deep. So he can persuade clients to do anything because just his voice is that magnanimous, right? So if you can use that power in every single proposal, that's incredible, in my opinion.
I have so many questions. Like, for example, like clearly, it stands out how much you're passionate about this product. And I was wondering, it would be also interesting to have people write comments on each of the blocks that
Yeah, oh,
on
yeah.
the design variation, like, okay, I like the second design. And that becomes like a version control. You on this date, you mentioned that.
Yeah, so we actually do have that feature. I don't believe it's in this current iteration, like as a button you can click, but we've already prototyped it. But basically, what we want to do for clients is allow them to leave video feedback so they can record themselves and tell you everything about how they feel about the proposal. Not necessarily on a like section per section basis, where that commenting was reserved for your team, right? Because you want your PM or your boss to tell you exactly the comments to change on this section. But for clients, we want to make it so that when they receive a share link, they can leave a video feedback note. And at the bottom of the presentation, there's going to be a scheduler so they can schedule a meeting with you. So you don't have to send them a Calendly link or something, or like call them up and be like, do these 3 times work for you next week? They'll just pick a date on your calendar and then book a time with you. And then you can see the video feedback first and understand, Kitae is really sensitive about this being a statement making project. I can tell that he keeps on saying, it's not quite enough. So next time before we have a meeting that they've scheduled, I know to address that point, make them feel like they're heard, address that in the next variation of design. So I really want to tackle that section as well with something where it's not quite point by point comments, because you don't really want your clients to do that, right? That can get you in a lot of trouble, just like rework wise. But you want to get them to be feeling a certain way and understand how they're feeling about your proposal, I think is even more important, right? And then being able to address those feelings is like half the battle as a sales or, client contact person, PM, right? You need to be managing expectations. You need to be understanding how they feel about the design and then positioning your creativity or your creative solution as the solution to that problem. So you're not just designing a living room for someone, right? You're designing the space where their family gathers. That's the nuance.
God, makes sense. It also provoked me an idea. There's a big Canva like layer to this. Like a firm could have their own templates of healthcare, hospital, and other things, and they can also adopt from the best templates from all over the world. Like so, it becomes a whole like library to build upon it rather than reinventing that RFP layer of presentation.
No, I totally agree. I mean, so far we're just building the templates, but other people could as well. And the idea is that our templates get you started with the best fonts, right? And you don't have to worry about the colors. You'll be able to customize all that if you want. In our opinion, it's like, why should you? You should do it once, right? And that's your firm's identity, right? I used to have a style in here that's called Frank Lloyd Wright. And it was like, kind of like a light brown background and dark red font, more like old school feeling. And I was like, this is great for certain firms who only do residential and they're out in like Montana or something and they want that like pastoral feel. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to take one of our templates, edit it to how you like it a little bit, maybe change the title font to something like a serif that you really like, save it, maybe upload a custom font, and it just works, right? Your whole firm now has the same identity across all proposals. Let's say somebody leaves, person who was managing the template, and they leave it. all of a sudden nobody knows how to change it, right? It's like, oh, we have to go put somebody else to go fix that problem. I had that in my old job, right? But this way, the identity is saved no matter what. People can go in and out. You can hire contractors. Everything looks the same, has your company's logo on it. So that's something that's standard. And like, let's say email marketing apps that all these firms use anyway. Why is that not in our proposals, right? The thing that actually makes us
Mm.
money.
You mentioned about learning B2B sales from coming from designer to that. What are other things you had to learn or figure out to run the business successfully?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things. One of them is definitely how to create a network. I worked in fine art in Montreal for 6 years. When I moved back to New York City, I was like, dang, I don't know anybody anymore. All my contacts are in a different country and operating in a very different industry. Like fine art and experiential is not nearly the same as architecture, even though architects are often on those projects. So I had to rebuild that network and figuring out how to contact people, how to get partnerships. Became a part of the SketchUp 0 to 60 challenge because I reached out to Dave Frankel at SketchUp, the head of partnerships. I know people now at Lumion, MSI, T5, Autodesk. Being able to reach out to these people and understand how they feel about the industry, understand where their products are going, all of that matters a lot. So I think that's been a real skill to learn is how to just talk to people and not necessarily make everything about getting something out of the other person. So, I would encourage everybody who's thinking of becoming a founder or is a founder, figure out how to message people in a way that gets them to want to meet with you. And don't try to sell them something, right? Like just try to help and really put yourselves in their shoes. It's the key to all client relationships is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and realizing, what would help them, right? So let's say you're the head of partnerships at SketchUp, right? They look good if they're making partnerships with other cool companies, right? So that also helps the product. So you got to figure out if you're going to message them, how to just open up with that. It's like, would love to work on some co-marketing material, right? All of a sudden they're like, oh, this person's going to help me with marketing, right? I don't have to go do this work. I can go do it. So um, that's a good way to think about how can we work together with other people and get them to say yes, get them to take that meeting. And like now we're all digital, right? So you got to learn how to be able to do this on LinkedIn or whatever platforms that you like using, calling people, and get very comfortable with keeping up with people and unlocking their true problem, right? Their perceived problem. I keep on saying this, but people will rarely tell you what their perceived problem is because they don't know themselves.
Mm.
It's hard for them to articulate. So that is, I think, kind of the key to these relationships is sussing that out for them and then helping them solve it.
Last one would be, so for the design firms you're targeting, you mentioned about like thinking about a messaging that will actually understand their problem and you're making their life easy that gets you caught. So what's the channel that worked out very well for your client acquisition? Is it LinkedIn, cold email, or
I think honestly, LinkedIn, and it's changed a lot with AI, where cold email is just like decimated by AI bots. So it doesn't work nearly as well. And then LinkedIn, I think, is big. My friend Tyler Somala, he's growth detect. He was the year above me at Michigan, but he's at Newsletter, which is fantastic. And I could see just looking from his success that free newsletters and stuff are very effective. So I wrote on Substack. LinkedIn is my favorite just because it's kind of like you put it out there. Usually, what I write on LinkedIn, I copy to my Substack as well. But then I also find that the partnerships are big too, right? If you do work with Rhino, let's say, and I told you we posted on the Rhino blog and got hundreds of signups. I think we got like 400 signups in the first 2 weeks just off a website to 30 presentations, right? That was great because people see you on Food for Rhino, they see you on the Rhino emails, see you on the Rhino blog, and they just start to remember you, right? So the partnerships is a big deal because it also signals that you're part of the industry. I think with all the BIM 2.0 apps, now they're all adding Rhino support. And it's like, yeah, duh. Nobody is creating a facade for a whole entire 15-story building in SketchUp or it's like in Revit, right? They're probably doing it in Rhino. And any like conceptual design is happening in Rhino. You can just do a lot more, and especially for larger projects. So making these partnerships, the tools that people know and love is a big deal. So I'd say that's another big avenue for client. acquisition. And then, what else? I would say those are the main ones that we've tested so far and work well. Social media, besides LinkedIn, can be kind of tough. I haven't really tried it yet. A little bit on Instagram, but I think it depends what you're selling. Like, if you're selling courses or something smaller, more AD architect or small firm targeted, then Instagram could be really good. But there's so much noise, right? It's like you got to compete with some brain rot memes and I don't know, like other things on Instagram, right? Like crazy videos. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's all business. So it really depends. The firm owners are on LinkedIn or in-person events and stuff like that. If I were like really rich, I would like go to a whole bunch of these super expensive events. You know, my place in the art world, right, where I used to be, you go to all these art fairs and stuff like that, and you meet super high profile people. Like our old clients were literal billionaires. So if I had a whole bunch of money, I'd probably just be going to like these super exclusive things, right? And trying to attract clients that way. But that would be more if I was a firm owner and I was like somewhere at let's say Heatherlick Studios, right? And I want to get that luxury billionaire client, that I'm going to be going to some hotel, boutique
Mhm.
hotel out in the Maldives, right? So I think it really depends who you're targeting, what level they're at, um, and also the resources that you have at your disposal. But I'm in New York, so going to lots of architecture events is easy. So many of them are here. You know, the AI can be a great resource if you're a part of that. People like buying from other people, so just remember that. And when you cold email, I've never really had success with cold email. Maybe other people have, but I don't really believe that just having an offer in there, having an AI read this person's LinkedIn description, create 2 sentences that's relevant to them, then having your offer is a good way to do business. Like, I just don't think that that's going to exist in a couple of years.
I see. You have like few rapid fire. You have like 5 to 10 seconds to answer it. Who's your favorite architect?
Oh, my favorite architect, I really like Carlos Scarpa. Dead but amazing work.
Your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant? Well, I'm Korean, so I'm definitely partial to Korean restaurants. New York City, what do I really like? There's a place called Osamya, which is great. It's a little Korean gastropub. Whenever people come to town and I need to take them to like a slightly nicer but great food dinner, I take them there.
A city which is in your travel bucket list?
My travel bucket list. I really want to go to Jaipur in India or Rajasthan in general. You know, some place with like really awesome ancient architecture.
Uh, a book which made a big impact in your life?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Persick.
It's on my list.
That's a great
Um,
one. I read it like once every couple years.
nice. Best piece of advice you have received till date?
I think just going for it, not waiting for permission, having your own agency, and being kind of delusional, right? Like if you keep on thinking of all the ways it's going to go wrong, you'll never do it. Just go fucking do it.
3 words your friend would describe you as?
Probably extroverted, friendly, loyal.
Awesome. It was pleasure hosting you, Kite. Such a fun journey. So many insights, and the product you're building is promising.
Thank you so much, Mary. Yeah, thank you for much. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Let's do it again.
Awesome.